Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto Anime review. This one's going to be for episode 154, which is called Himawari's Ninja Trial Session. And I thought that this was a very good episode of Boruto. It, right up until the final scene, I felt was delivering us an amazingly strong single episode character arc for Himawari, a character who I think everyone loves, everyone wants to see more attention on, and everyone wants to see actually be given some proper character development to set her up for where she's going in the future. And that's what this episode delivered in my mind right up until the very end, when it was utterly unwilling to commit to anything. Now, I don't think the ending is just like outright, it just immediately invalidates the rest of the episode. But I think the last scene could have been done a little bit better to highlight that she's maybe like, yeah, I think I do want to be a shinobi, but like, I'll try other stuff out before that. But, the team, Eho and Yuina, like, I couldn't let them down. I have to commit to this. Like, I would have preferred this episode if they either just committed to, at the end, she is very confident about, I want to be a shinobi. That would be a huge statement for the character and some actual big character development that I think was earned even in just this one episode. Or you have her primarily commit but still be kind of like, okay, there's still time before like Academy starts, we'll see what happens. Instead, I felt like what they did with that end scene was more revert to the very start of this episode of her, going to Ino's flower shop and being like, oh, that looks interesting. Going to Tenten's, weapon shop and being like, oh, that's interesting. And just like seeing all these different roles and like being conflicted again. It felt a little bit too much like the experience that she just went through wasn't given as much focus as the episode we just saw gave it. And I think that's the thing here, is that I felt that Eho and Yuina, the members of her team over the course of this, were actually really well done characters, and I want to see them again. That if we eventually get to that time skip in Boruto, I want to see the three of these characters in the academy together. I want to see them be on the three-man squad. It felt like this episode alone did enough groundwork to justify, like, yeah, these three, absolutely, 100%. There's no need to introduce other characters, you've already done it. This is Himawari's squad figured out already. Like, that's how impressed I was with the majority of this episode. The rivalry dynamic between Eho and Himawari, and how it linked back into the classic Naruto thing of, the talented character who's maybe not as committed versus the character who isn't as talented but has to put all of their hard work and dedication in, and they're still not as good. That's what you got here at the start, and what I thought was such a great dynamic is to see Himawari, who you can't really be overly critical of, but put in this position where, from Eho's perspective, you get why he is so frustrated with her. She is so talented and so good that she's better than him, who's done all this training ahead of the trial session. Yet Himawari is still better than him, yet she is so unaware of what she wants to do. And he sees that lack of commitment as being a huge problem, that she is going to bring him down regardless of her talent, because she doesn't have the same drive and commitment that he has. And that's what the significance of Iruka telling Himawari about, that classic trait of Naruto's, her father's, gutsiness, and the idea of never giving up. And that's what Himawari learns in this episode. And that's why I felt that, like, the last scene was just like, oh, I get you're trying to be somewhat realistic of her choosing her career path and taking the time about it, but like, this was an episode to really commit to a character arc in my mind. And I don't want to come across as being like hypercritical of the episode just because it felt like it set a little bit of a reset switch at the end. I still think the first part of the episode is absolutely worthwhile and still valid. And I do ultimately think that when we finally get back to Himawari, she will decide to be a ninja. I think it was very much just a case of this episode and the writers being a little unwilling to commit to anything with Himawari, because in general the manga has never really decided on anything with her. She's kind of just been the cute daughter of Naruto, and that's really about it. She's a cute daughter of Naruto, and she has Byakugan that activates in a weird way when she's angry, and she does the whole lock-on thing. She like becomes a different person, and she gets like a power boost seemingly. It was just this sort of quirky trait of this kind of Boruto's sister. This was the episode that I felt like really sort of like established like more of her character itself. That's why I like really want to emphasize that I felt that this was a very important episode of Boruto. Yet I felt the final scene served more to kind of be like, don't treat this episode as being particularly important, because she still wants to do this and this and this, and she's really not committed yet to being a shinobi. But that feels like exactly what this episode was about, and it did it so well. It's like a victim of its success at the start almost. But yeah, like I said, even Yuina as like the other member of the team who didn't get as much focus, I like that there was just that sense of like she was the shy sort of reserved member of the team who was behind the other two quite clearly. Himawari and Eho were clear the most talented in terms of physical skills. But Yuina is still committed to being a shinobi. She says that to Himawari. I want to be a shinobi. I know that this is what I want to do. And you clearly see that she's put her time and effort into like learning certain tracking skills so she can be useful, even if she's not the best frontline fighter. She's not the most athletic or anything like that. And I like that, just seeing that, desire from that sort of Hinata-esque character that Yuina was. And it played really well with the more sort of, I suppose, Naruto-Neji dynamic almost that there was between Himawari and Eho, of like the talent versus the easy talent versus the hard work, lack of talent dynamic that we usually get in Naruto. I thought that was really well done in this episode, and you completely understood Eho's frustration, but you also felt sorry for Himawari, because it's not her fault that she is this skilled without putting in as much effort as others. And it's just a different angle on the sort of Naruto-Sasuke dynamic, the Naruto-Neji dynamic, as I said. And that's where I think Naruto is usually at its best, when it plays with some of these, classic sort of character dynamics and traits. And that's why I really, again, emphasizing with it, I really loved this episode right up until I felt that last scene just kind of brought it down a few levels. Not because it just reversed everything, but because this episode would have been just brilliant if they had just said anything of Himawari like committing to, I want to be a shinobi. And it did and it didn't. And I think that's the problem with that last scene, of it's just falling at the last hurdle and preventing this episode from being probably like one of the best episodes of the Boruto anime. I'm sure we'll come back to Himawari. I don't know if they're necessarily setting up that we'll get an episode of like Himawari trying out running a flower shop or trying out selling ninja tools or anything like that. That's where this arc might go very much astray if they do that. Because I do really think that when the time comes in terms of like Himawari going to the academy, she will go there, I think, with the intent of wanting to be a shinobi. That the three of them after this experience will want to be on a team together. And they will want to help each other out, and it will be this very, very nice dynamic. And I think that's cool, of just going in from the start, knowing what like a main character like Himawari, what her team is from the beginning. And so you've done the development before she even has to start the academy. And then whenever Boruto does its time skip, you can just, cut and suddenly just have, Himawari as a genin or whatever. That's going to be so cool to see those three, grow up if they commit to it again. And I think that's the main thing I want to say about this, is just the end of this episode, that scene of her being, again, not committed, not making a decision. I hope they don't just use that as a way to be like, oh yeah, Eho and Yuina, they don't really matter. Like, it was just a little bit of thing we were doing with Himawari. there'll be other new characters introduced when she finally does join the academy. And it's kind of like, do you need to after an episode that, in my mind, was this strong? So, I don't know, but it's just one of those weird episodes where I don't remember there ever being an episode of a show I've reviewed where just one scene deserves talking about so much because of how it sort of changes the dynamics in the rest of the episode, and just like so heavily represents that idea of missing the mark with your final scene. It's just really kind of incredible to look back on this episode and see how well done it is, and then they just don't commit right at the end, and it brings the episode down to earth from what was otherwise fantastic. So yeah, I think it deserves praise for the development for Himawari, the new character introductions for Eho and Yuina, and also, you know, some pretty nice scenes with like Iruka and Shino, like seeing Iruka kind of be like, oh, it's the principal, I don't get to interact with the kids as much, and Shino's just like, come out with us to observe this time, and he's the one who gives Himawari the pep talk and explains to her about, you know, like, you know, I think you do have that gutsiness, and she's like, what does that mean? And he's like, you know, never giving up, that was a trait of your father's. And it's like, yes, that's a pretty big, you know, moment, I think, to finally really address, you know, Himawari coming from the same lineage that Boruto comes from, that, you know, you will have some traits of your father, you will have some traits of your mother. And seeing her like have to like be sort of embarrassed in front of everyone and be like, yeah, my dad is the Hokage, and her having to like be like, oh, like he's just about to say dad but has to have to say father to be that little bit more formal kind of interacting with others. And you know, you could immediately see that, like, oh, are they going to go down the angle of maybe like targeting her a little bit for that, which Eho kind of does, but they more play up to just, you know, talent versus hardworking aspect that they usually do. So yeah, I think that's most of what I want to say about this episode. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this episode, especially what your thoughts were on the final scene. I know there's a lot of people out there who initial reactions to the episodes that I've seen who aren't as, you know, harsh on that final scene in terms of what it did. Let me know what your thoughts were. Did you feel that it really sort of got in the way of what the episode overall was trying to accomplish, or do you think it is actually a path for a better arc potentially to have her be undecided right now? But yeah, let me know your thoughts overall on this episode. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.